Season 2 of Love, Transform, Evolve is brought to you by Dreams Financial. When I was looking for a new financial advisor, Alex and Steph were the obvious choice. They didn't just see me as a client, but rather as a partner in building and protecting my wealth. Their personalized approach and innovative solutions have made financial planning a breeze, not to mention the fact that they are in it with me, explaining everything as we go so that I always know where my money is going and why. And when it comes to the death of a loved one, Alex and Steph are experts at providing compassionate guidance, offering clarity and direction. For more information, visit their website at dreamsfinancial.ca. Episode 5, Burnt Out Heroes. Welcome to Love, Transform, Evolve.
Caregivers experience loneliness at a 63% higher risk than the rest of the population.
Reach out to a medical professional as soon as possible.
I turned off a lot of healthy coping mechanisms.
You just stop caring.
Panic and burnout, it's all par for the course in the caregiving journey. I really wish I didn't have to say this. I really wish it wasn't something that is par for the course. But unfortunately, in speaking to so many people, it's what we deal with. When you fall off that tightrope, when you're walking it, when you run into that burning building and you just can't breathe, you feel asphyxiated. What is that like? For me, I got very close to not being able to return to work. And if it hadn't been for that time that I took for myself after both of my parents passed to really just sit in the thick of it, I don't know how I would have survived, truly. I'm having a very real moment as I'm trying to describe burnout to you right now, because I'm realizing in this moment that a lot of the things that are the symptoms of burnout for me are going on right now as I'm sitting here talking to you. And it's scary. It's scary because I do know myself. And even though I know myself and I know these symptoms, only that now that I'm taking the time to reflect on them, can I see it creeping up on me. Burnout for me looks like sleepless nights. It looks like not being present in my life and forgetting things that are otherwise mundane. I'm not actively caregiving right now, but in all transparency, 2 weeks ago, the basement of my house completely flooded. And it did so overnight. It did so at a time when so many other people in Montreal and Quebec, like me, their homes flooded due to torrential rains. And needing to be in go mode at a time when I was already busy and managing a lot of tasks meant that I turned off a lot of healthy coping mechanisms like exercise, like meditation, like drinking lots of water. That all went away. And I sit here describing what burnout feels like or approaching burnout feels like, and I feel like something's got to change. It's interesting how a lot of the things that we deal with as a part of the caregiving role are just really highlighted by the role of caregiving, but we're all human and we all go through these things. When I was talking to Cindy Jordan, the founder and CEO of Pyx Health, who you heard from in a previous episode, her technology is fronted by AI. It's a bot that helps somebody who can take the time in the moment to interact with it. It helps them identify their loneliness level. Her solution will, if people are approaching chronic loneliness, will then get somebody to a human. And it's humans that we need to help us when we're feeling completely charred. Being a caregiver in my opinion, both personally and also speaking with so many people, is an opportunity for personal development, growth, and transformation. I mean, it changes you. And it changes you because it gives you access to the positive and the negative of the entire human experience. You know, you run the gamut of all those emotions like you're talking about. And in the thick of it, it can feel completely isolating because the environment that you're used to, the environment that, you know, and the beat of life, the pace of life is not the same as it's been. And therefore, you have to be somebody different while managing the emotions of caring for somebody that you love, while being tactical and all of that, right? Which again comes up time and again, this feeling of being not understood, burdened with isolation and loneliness, you know, in that role.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said, and then you tack on at the very end, and no one understands. And right there, your brain is starting to get in, it's starting to go through the motions. Everything's starting to rewire. No one understands. No one can possibly, you know, understand this burden that I'm carrying. And I feel guilty unburdening myself because of what I'm doing over here and who I'm caring for.
Absolutely. Hey, I started a podcast so that I could be heard and understood. So, you know.
You're hilarious most.
So, there are some reasons that loneliness can be dangerous, like not just linked to mental health. I just want to touch on like physical manifestations of what that looks like for some people with loneliness.
You know, I don't think they've like linked it to like, you know, let's call it 2 or 3 physical manifestations. But what we do know is that for folks who have chronic, you know, physical conditions, there are certain ones that have higher propensity of loneliness. So like diabetics, higher propensity of loneliness. Folks who struggle with obesity, higher propensity of loneliness. But what we find, and this is completely unofficial for any, you know, we serve, you know, literally hundreds of thousands of people. So we have some data, but we've never run it through a clinical trial. We find that folks, like it shows up in pain, right? So people who are chronically lonely are often going to the emergency room, yet they'll leave there with no diagnosis. And
Right.
and I'm not saying they're not feeling pain. I believe they are physically feeling pain, but there is no physical medical reason for it. And so they're chronically lonely and they're going to go to the emergency room and then it becomes like, you know, like sort of a repetitive. So we're talking about pain. We're talking about, you know, often like a lack of hygiene. You know, you just stop caring.
It's really tough because I read a statistic recently that said something to the effect of 35% of caregivers actually pass away before the person that they're caring for. And I can't only imagine that part of that is due to just the feeling of like letting everything else go for yourself, right? Like not going to the doctors or not having that treatment and that diagnosis.
Caregivers experience loneliness at a 63% higher risk than the rest of the population. And that's a profound number, right? So what we do know about loneliness is that it's more fatal than obesity and alcoholism put together. See, it's profound.
I'm just letting that sink in for a moment.
So that's why your stat, while it's startling, it makes sense.
I fear where we're going just with the healthcare system, the way that it is, just with the aging population that we have. And it's not just aging population, right? It's people who are getting sicker. It's young. It's this whole, just our needs.
We have a whole generation of parents my age. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure you're not quite there yet, but my age who are caring for young adults with serious, you know, mental health issues, addiction. You know, it's getting to the point where even as parents, you know, being a parent is being extended dramatically. And so I think at some point, and you know, this is not official, but I think at some point it stops being a parental role and more of a caregiving role, which is exactly what happened with us and Riley way before, you know, even the diagnosis. Like we were caregiving for her, like failures, successes, in and out of school, like losing jobs, like that's caregiving.
That's exactly it. Expanding this definition so that we really understand that, 1 in 2 of us is going to be a caregiver, and it's not just for the elderly, but it is that going above and beyond, the traditional familial roles or just relational roles, where really there is this dependent. And I think I heard you mention, which is really interesting about the experience, is that everything starts to become measured. Right? It's the highs and the lows, and today's a good day and a bad day. And then we have, like you said, the jobs. And so all of that, it's so important
about caregivers. This is the hard thing about caregivers and because we serve them through health plans here in the States, it's hard to find them. You can find sick people. You can find people that go in and out of the emergency room. You can find, but caregivers who are what I call the rising risk, like before they're in that part where it's like actually, critical, how do you find them? And this is the challenge. And I promise you, we probably have 5 meetings a week on how do we find caregivers. Because the other thing too, is that a lot of folks don't even know to identify that way.
There is a dark side to caregiving. It will take its toll if we don't have the right tools, if we are not aware of what's going on, if life just happens the way it happens. But we're also not victims, and there are very real, very tangible things we can do. I was inspired, as you had heard in a previous episode, by Claire Webster and all that she had gone through and what she's doing in the dementia healthcare space on the flip side of her own caregiving journey and her own burnout journey. And here are some of her tips of what she shared with me to get through burnout. If somebody listening right now is feeling like they're potentially on the edge, like burnout is imminent, or they've had a burnout and they don't know how to get themselves out, what would you say are the first steps they could take to help them?
In order for me, like if I reflect back on my burnout, what I should have done differently was that I should have accepted or sought support sooner, right? Like I could feel the burnout, and I think close friends of mine were watching it about to happen. But I was kind of like, I kept saying, no, I'm fine. Many thanks, but I don't need help. I don't need help. And so, but I should have reached out for help, whether that be, a psychologist, therapist, a family doctor. I should have gone and said, I'm feeling this. And, for me, when we think of the word post-traumatic stress disorder, we think of like soldiers at war. But, among my many symptoms, I started drinking way too much. My anger was like on a scale of 1 to 100, it was at 100, and then I started to really develop these shakes. But again, I kept like, no, I kept trying to suppress it all. So I would say that, reach out to a medical professional as soon as possible. And then the second thing that I really needed to do upon my road of healing, which I do today, my mother passed away in 2016, but I live by this today. And it's like, I needed to do a triage of my life. And meaning what I meant by triage is I had to look at the people and commitments in my life and say, what are the ones that are really adding good value and positive to me? And what are the ones that I need to let go of? So for example, I had to even look at my friend group and say, there was this one woman that would call me almost every week and say, what drama is going on in your life this week? Or get mad at me because I wasn't having coffee or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to surround myself with friends like that. Or even to this day, if I get invited for a dinner party, I look at the list of people and I say, do I want to spend 4 hours like with these people? Like what type of conversations are having, right? Because when you're a caregiver, you have to give so much energy. So I started to really pay attention of like what I call the energy suction, the energy drainers, right? And saying, no, I'm not going for dinner with these people. Why does this person want to have lunch? At least I really started to protect my space, even with people. Sometimes with regards to family members, that could be difficult. But, for a while, I had a rule that certain family members, it was very difficult to be around. So I would only have lunch because lunch is an hour and 15 minutes. Normally there's no alcohol involved, so it's fast. But if you're having a dinner with somebody, it's much longer. So that was important. The other thing was like, once upon a time, I was at Yes Woman that, it was whether with my kids' schools or friends who are involved in different organizations. Claire, would you like to be on my committee? Do you want to help? And I would be like, oh, sure, I'll help. Well, I had to look at all my commitments and say, you know what? If it's not a hell yes, I'm not doing this anymore. And as soon as I get that email or the text reminding me that, oh, but this meeting is at that day, if I'm like, oh, it was time to let go. So I really did a triage, and I'm still triaging stuff, like it's very, I remember getting off certain boards or getting off certain committees, and people would say, oh, I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed. But you know what? I don't care. Like, it's like, you got to protect your energy. So, I would say to people, get help. Don't wait until you're going to have your own health crisis, and really look at your life, really fill it with what matters to you. And don't apologize if you don't want to do something.
If you like what you heard today, be sure to rate, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes from Season 2 of Love, Transform, Evolve drop every Wednesday morning. I'm Cynthia Iorio. Until next time.